Greetings, everybody. Dave DeWalt here, the founder and CEO of NightDragon. As you can tell from the logo behind me, and sorry for the darkness, I'm coming to you live from Scottsdale, Arizona, and really excited to have our next version of NightVision here, talking about the state of Asia. And the state of Asia has a lot of conversation, obviously, because we're having a big event here in San Francisco as well, on the west coast of the US, which is the APEC Summit, the Asia Pacific Economic Summit. This summit brings together 21 nations from Asia, the leaders from all over Asia coming together to talk about all things opportunity, but also a lot of challenges as well. As you probably all know, the Asian market's been growing incredibly fast. The market's becoming more than $1 trillion economy. All those nations are looking for ways to leapfrog with digital transformations, country by country, corporation by corporation. And it's really created a really unbelievable opportunity. Some of you might have seen what some of the countries like Singapore have done with Smart Nation and the whole idea of smart cities, or what India's done with the Digital India programs, or Malaysia with My Digital. But the dark side of all of this has been the cybersecurity environment, the threats that are happening to the environment as well. While all this digital growth has been amazing, Asia is really the most attacked region in the world, representing 31% of all cyber breaches and attacks, 31%. More than 54% of all companies have experienced a data breach of some kind, and more than a third don't even have a chief security officer or incident response plan. So you have a lot of attacks, you have very little defense, you have a high degree of digital growth, and you've really created a challenging situation for Asia. Today, I have just an amazing special guest as well. And he probably will laugh at my accent, but I'll laugh at his as well. John Waters, thank you so much for joining, my friend. Great to see you. And you got to just say a word about what that sign is behind you before I introduce you.
Thanks, David. Good to be on here. And the sign behind me is very simple: grow. And we at NextGen grow and have been growing at a clip rate of 37% CAGR since we started. So growth's big for us.
John, congratulations on your business as well, and Chief Executive Officer. Tell a little bit about NextGen just for a minute, a little bit more about what you do, what regions you cover, and a little bit about for the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This is our 13th year of operation. Started in Australia, and the aim was to get into the whole move to cloud world around enterprise software and cloud technologies. And we've been here in Australia for, as I said, 12 years, New Zealand for about 10, and we launched during COVID into 4 countries in Asia: Singapore, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia. And the last 5 years, we've really flipped the business into a cybersecurity business, where more than 70% of our business today is in cybersecurity and data resilience.
Yeah, thank you, by the way, for the partnership with NightDragon, John, as well. Your organization's amazing, and really proud of all the success you've had. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what I started with was, what are you seeing from the threat landscape and all the regions that you have? You mentioned a few interesting countries along the way. How do you summarize the threat environment as we sit here in November 2023?
Yeah. Well, look, just leverage off some of your statistics and comments you opened with. Arguably, Asia is the powerhouse of the world as far as economic power and opportunity goes. We've known that, the benefit of China, now what India is doing, and so on. But so with that, I think this area has got to be stable. It's got to be secure, and it's got to be interference-free. Otherwise, that powerhouse of the world is going to be at risk. Therefore, cybersecurity becomes, as you've pointed out by those stats, absolutely key to the economic, political, and social frameworks of this area. And a lot of people lump Asia together. Well, we're a region of well over 40 nations. And anyone who just lumps us together, I think, is missing out on the opportunity and the issues and that go on there, because all of those countries are at varying degrees of maturity. developing countries, developed countries, certain governments in certain countries, certain dictatorships in other countries. And so therefore, you've really got to look at the breadth of Asia and the impact that that's having. And that, as you said, comes down to how the threat landscape is perceived and executed.
One of the stats I always talk to, John, it's still, after 20 some years of being in the cybersecurity and national security markets, just amazes me. As we're sitting here in 2023, we're going to see about 250 billion globally of spend in cybersecurity, give or take a little bit, but around 250 billion, which may sound like a very large number to most people. But when you start to look at the losses that are happening in cybersecurity, you're talking numbers around 6 to 7 trillion. So imagine running a company where, your losses are 6 or 7 trillion and your revenues are 250 billion. It wouldn't be a good environment. But that's what we're faced with in 2023 as we see it. John, what are you seeing from kind of the good guy side, from the technology vantage point? I know you represent a lot of amazing companies. What are you seeing as some of the biggest trends that are happening in Asia from a spending point of view and a technology adoption point of view?
Yeah, look, a couple of points I sort of hit on there, really. If you look at the disparate countries and the impact and what they're trying to do with cybersecurity, you've got the GDPR throughout, you've got some of the nations you talked about and the digital economies that they're doing. You look at, say, what Australia's doing down here, down under, and the Essential 8, looking at the ambitious target that the government has thrown out about being the most secure nation globally in 2030. That's a really ambitious target, and they're investing $9 billion into that to start with, and they've increased the corporation fines for not reporting or not having the right cybersecurity frameworks together from $2 million to $50 million last year. So using Australia as an example, each of the nation states are looking at different ways to try and combat that. Then I think for actual execution, you look at the tsunami of vendors. I think, what is it, Dave? Over 2,500 cybersecurity vendors have come out of the various valleys of the world over the last few years alone. That brings with it a lot of complexity, because even though a lot of them may be best of breed, how does a corporation or a government pull those together to give a great defensive strategy and, in fact, be proactive in the cybersecurity market? It brings in complexity. It brings in decision-making slowness. It actually probably brings in some sort of paralysis around making decisions. Do I just stick with my current vendors rather than go for the best of breed? Do I throw more money at Microsoft rather than look at some of the other options I've got as well? So that's my views of it. Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit about, one of the things we've seen here in the United States, and I'd be curious from your perspective from Asia, and particularly down under with Australia. I like using that word too. But we've seen a lot of public-private partnership. And I think cybersecurity, from my vantage point, is a team sport. It requires government working together with corporations, working together with all the trusted advisors. The US government has done a pretty amazing job building public-private partnerships together. What have you seen from the countries that you serve? Is that a direction you're seeing happening, where more and more partnership, or has it not improved from your vantage point?
No, it certainly has, and it's increasing. I mean, one of the reasons we decided to pick on those 4 countries I talked about, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines, is we had a really, really good look from analysts and our own research in where the hyperscalers, the big boys, the AWSs, the Microsofts, the Googles, the IBMs, the Oracles of the world were investing in. And they're investing in those countries and others. I think Microsoft just announced a $5 billion investment into Australia, as an example. IBM's done a similar thing into Indonesia and some of the other stats that you talked about. So looking at what they're doing, and I think we could do a lot worse and get on the coattails of where that investment's going. And I think a lot of that is being done with government support and initiatives involved. So totally agree with you. I'm seeing that across the board.
John, what are you starting to see? It's hard to have a conversation of late without the 2-letter word AI in it. And it's been amazing watching almost 1 year now since we've really seen OpenAI arrive on the scene of the world, and ChatGPT really enter the world of cybersecurity as well. I know you work with a lot of vendors. Are you starting to see AI as a real defense? What are you seeing from the offense? How do you characterize AI as we sit here going into 2024?
Yeah, a great question. And I was sort of expecting that you might bring that up, Dave. But could I just take one step back to get to that question? And that is around the whole cloud adoption in this region. Depending which analysts you look at, they would say that at a developed country more like Australia, the cloud adoption of enterprise software that's moved into a cloud environment is somewhere around, give or take 5%, 25%. 20%, 30%. So there's a huge opportunity to move more cloud. If you look at the more undeveloped parts of, or developing, I should say, being positive, developing parts of Asia, it is probably only 5%. So there's huge opportunity there across the board. Now, what that means, I think, for the best of breed, mainly SaaS-style cybersecurity vendors, is because the cloud adoption is so low, they haven't really got a footprint and can't get a footprint into those countries yet. And therefore, I come back to my point about the hyperscalers. If the hyperscalers are building data centers and investing in those developing countries, that will allow more of the cybersecurity SaaS vendors to come in and have a role to play. Then you roll that into AI. The beauty about AI is real-time analytics, real-time defense, real-time support, and then looking at in a proactive sense. So therefore, I think AI needs to follow the cloud adoption strategy of this region, is my personal view.
Well, I think that's a great view, and I think very, very accurate as well. The advantage that I see now is we just have an amazing opportunity to leverage AI for defense, cybersecurity defense. It's still a little early, but a lot of companies are moving very quickly, adopting generative AI front ends, giving us a lot more ability to automate humans and really create a more powerful architecture. Microsoft, Google, others really leading the way. It's encouraging to see. But on the other side, we're seeing the attackers as well be very aggressive too. What advice do you give, John? Kind of last question for you. You see such a big part of the world, the amazing company, NextGen Group, and what you're doing. Thank you for that partnership again. What advice are you giving global leaders, CISOs that you work with right now as kind of like the best trusted advice you can give?
Yeah, I think your last point was really valid, and I just jump on that quickly. If we're not using the best technologies underpinned by AI, guess what? The enemies are. And therefore, we've got to move quickly to counter that. So I just want to make, I think, a really good point. I think what I would suggest is people understand the geopolitical tensions. I think the geopolitical tensions in this region are underpinning a lot of the cyber that's going on, at both at nation state level and at individual actor level as well. So if you don't understand the geopolitical tensions, then in this disparate part of the world, then you're not really in the game and how you actually understand that. And then you've got to understand each of the different nation states, their cultural issues, their social issues, their education and skills issue, which is a huge issue around this whole cyber. Have we got the right education and skills programs to ensure we can defeat the bad guys? They're the sort of things that I think need to be really looked at. And for anyone who wanted to come and invest in this region, they need to not just sort of lump us all together, not come in and think, okay, I've put a footprint into Australia or I've put a footprint into Singapore and that covers the region. That is not the case at all. Invest with a lot of wood behind the arrow into one or two countries first and then expand. And make sure you've got real local boots on the ground that understand all the nuances I just talked about. I think it's important.
John, thank you for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, John Walters from NextGen Group, one of the fastest growing companies in all of Asia. Thank you for the partnership. Thank you for the friendship. Good to see you, my friend. And I hope to see you soon at another event.
Okay. Thank you, David. Good to be on. Ciao.
All right, thank you.